Hi everyone, this is Dylan from Dylan's Reptile Time. Hope you're all doing okay. Now, as it's getting a bit colder and we're heading into winter, I thought we'd do a little video on how reptiles and amphibians actually deal with the cold weather. Now, a lot of people think reptiles and amphibians are only found in really warm places. Now, a lot of them are, but you can also find reptiles and amphibians in places that experience really harsh, cold winters. And in fact, the only continent where you can't find reptiles and amphibians is Antarctica, where it's just too cold for too long for animals like that to survive. So reptiles and amphibians, they're known as ectothermic, or some people call them cold-blooded, but they're called ectothermic, and that means that they can't control their own body heat. So what they have to do is they have to rely on external factors like the sun to keep them warm and stay active and maintain their body temperatures. So this is fine in the spring and the summer, early autumn, but as it gets into winter, it's just too cold for them to stay active and hunt for their food. And they just slow down. And for the majority of mammals and birds, for example, that's fine because they can get like thicker layers of fur on their body, thicker plumage, thicker feathers, and survive the winter. And us humans, for example, well, we could just layer up, you know, we could put coats on, scarves and hats, you know, keep ourselves warm. But reptiles and amphibians, they don't have that luxury. They can't do that. You know, they don't get thicker scales all over their body during the winter. So they've developed different ways to get them through the cold, frosty winters. So when the temperature drops for long periods to a point where it's just too cold for the animals to be out and about, a lot of amphibians, like frogs and toads, they tend to bury themselves down into the soil underneath logs and leaves, underneath the frost layer as much as possible, and they can stay down there for months, to escape the harsh winter. So reptiles, especially snakes, they retreat to dens underneath the frost layer, and these can be old animal burrows or still in use animal burrows. They share it with the rabbits or whatever. It could be underneath tree root systems where there's a gap under there. And you'll find all these snakes come together, or different species as well, hang out together to see out the winter. And when they're all intertwined in there as well, they don't lose as much body heat, because they're all together. So that can keep them a little bit warmer as well. So the dens are actually referred to as hibernaculums. And what you'll find is the same snake will return to that same hibernaculum each year to escape the winter. And in North America and Canada, you can find hundreds or even thousands of garter snakes and other different species of snakes all living together, occupying the same den. And it's quite a sight in the spring, when they all kind of start emerging together. You can see hundreds or even thousands of garter snakes all coming out of their winter den. It's quite an impressive sight. Now, while they're down there in these hibernaculums, the main thing that reptiles and amphibians go through is a process called brumation, which is like hibernation for some mammals. And the reptile would slow themselves down and hardly move at all to conserve as much energy as possible. And their bodies slow down to such a point where their metabolism slows down. So they don't need to eat. So they don't eat anything for several months while they're down in these underground dens. And as it gets a bit warmer, they'll wake from their sleep sometimes, and they'll venture out of the hibernaculum to have a forage around. And then they'll return as, if the weather or the temperature drops again. So they don't venture too far because, if they don't get back in time, they get caught out in a cold snap, they'll unfortunately die. Because if they get caught for long spells in freezing conditions, then the water inside their body will just freeze up and it will damage their internal organs, form like ice crystals inside their vital organs, and they'll just shut down and unfortunately die. Now, for some reptiles and amphibians, to deal with this, they do something known as Supercool, and they store, big word coming up, cryoprotectants in their body, like glucose and taurine, and they actually lower the temperature at which liquids freeze within their body. So, for example, water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius, but because of these cryoprotectants inside their body, inside their system and internal organs, some reptiles and amphibians, they can supercool and tolerate freezing temperatures down to around minus 10 degrees Celsius or lower. So it helps the animal survive. Now, there's a little frog called the wood frog from North America and Canada, and that uses glucose as its cryoprotectant, along with a bit of stored urine as well, and that can allow up to 65% of its body water to freeze up. And the thing, you know, they just look frozen, they look dead, but actually those cryoprotectants inside their body are keeping them alive and stopping their vital organs from, you know, solidifying, getting ice crystals in there and freezing up. And they can withstand like really freezing conditions for weeks on end. And some snakes can do that as well, not as well as that, but snakes found around the Arctic Circle, such as, you know, some species of garter snake, for example, they use taurine as their cryoprotectant, and they can get down to about -5 degrees Celsius, only for a few hours though at that temperature. So I guess they're a snake that mainly brumates, so they'll go into, you know, into those underground dens. But if they come out of that den and then there's a, you know, a freeze, there's a cold snap, they can use those cryoprotectants to survive for a few hours, long enough for them to actually make it down back into their den again. Now there's one little amphibian that's taken this to the next level. So the Siberian newt, or Siberian salamander, that's got really high levels of glycogen in their system as their cryoprotectant. And that can actually freeze down to -45 degrees Celsius. And it can stay like that for several weeks at that temperature. So it's pretty crazy, isn't it? Just frozen solid. Now there's some freshwater turtles and some newts, they survive the winter, the freezing winter, by staying down at the bottom of the pond. And their bodies slow down to such an extent where they don't have to breathe through their mouths anymore. They can get all the oxygen they need by absorbing it through their skin. And they mainly absorb it around their mouth and around their bottom area, and they literally sit down at the bottom of the pond in the winter, breathing through their butt. That's pretty much it. You know, painted turtles in North America, they can do that, for example. As the temperatures rise, they'll slowly kind of make their way up to the surface, start breathing normally again, and bask out in the spring sunshine. That's pretty weird though, isn't it? Yeah, breathing through your butt. Right, so I've not got into too much scientific detail there, I don't think, or anything, but hopefully you'll have a better understanding now of how reptiles and amphibians survive the cold winter months and what they have to actually go through. So when you're snug under your blanket or your duvet later, just give a thought to all those little ectothermic dudes that are, you know, freezing their little butts off during the winter while you're in bed cozy and warm. Yeah, such a shame. Right, so yeah. Take care, guys, and I'll be back again with another video. All right, see ya. Bye.